Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I am J.R. Stays. It is Monday, December 4th, 2023, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. And as it is Monday, and well, it was a pretty big sports week. We've got a ton to talk about. Fletcher Sharp, good to hear from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, we've got quite the rundown. We're going to talk Lions. We're going to talk Wolverines. We're going to talk the Pistons and the dumpster fire that it currently feels like, as well as a little bit of Jim Leyland, which is frankly going to be my favorite topic of this whole thing. Let's start at the top with the Lions. The New Orleans Saints, they gave a scare, but the Lions sealed the deal 33-28. Killer great first start for the Lions, and then it just kind of shifted back and forth. I'm glad they pulled it off. The record speaks for itself. Win's a win. But that defense sometimes made me feel a little squeezy.
Yeah, it's harkens kind of back to the same old Lions in a way defensively, because when it's third and 3 and you're like, the Lions got it, that's good. But when it's third and 13, you're like, and you automatically know the other team's going to convert, that's a terrible feeling to have, where it's the further back the team is, 3rd and 17, 3rd and 20, it's like they're going to hit a 24-yard pass, aren't they? And lo and behold, they did. It's a deflating feeling to have. And honestly, if it wasn't for the fact that the Saints had one of the worst starts in history to a game, this game could have been very much a loss. Yeah, they gave up a touchdown. Then literally the first pass of the game is deflected for a one-handed interception by Brian Branch. Give up another touchdown. Then they give up a third, which is the record for points in a quarter is 21. The Lions could have scored maybe a few more and broken that record, but I'm glad because the win anyways. Yeah, just it. And the same warts kind of came back. They've struggled all season with rushing athletic quarterbacks, the ones who can throw but also run. Think back to Lamar Jackson for sure. And they brought in Taysom Hill, who he's a quarterback. He played quarterback at BYU. He's a pretty good quarterback at BYU. But as a professional athlete, he has been a Swiss Army knife player. He's a quarterback. He's punted a little bit. He's been a gunner on special teams. He's been an up back. Played a little bit of deep. He does everything. So when he comes in the game, you know for a fact he's probably running the ball. He might line up, he's gonna throw, but he's gonna run the ball. And the Lions knew that. They knew it, and they still couldn't stop it. And it was so weird to see these high school looking plays pulled out in a professional NFL game, and the professional NFL defense is oh, we don't know what to do.
So what's the difference, man? Because this wasn't the way it was earlier in the season.
I'm not really sure, honestly. I do know that sometimes teams get figured out. Earlier on, you have a certain scheme you haven't used before. Takes a few games before teams start to figure out, and then once teams see that you've been figured out, they kind of do that. Again, another example, Lamar Jackson. When he came in the league, he was super electric. Still is very electric, but teams picked up on he's probably going to run the ball more than throw. Make him throw the ball. So for a few years, Lamar had some issues throwing the ball. He's figured that out now, and that's why he's probably going to win another MVP sometime soon. So, maybe with the Lions' defense, I think schematically they got kind of figured out, but they were also, giving up some points early on. It wasn't like they were holding teams to 5, 6, 12 points, and now it's third. They were giving up 20-something points a game. It's just they were also winning it at a rate that was, at that time, astounding. So maybe it's something like that. They did pick up another pass rusher in Bruce Irvin, who, if you watch the NFL, he is a very well-known aggressive pass rusher off the edge for Seattle. Unfortunately, he picked up in a way, a good penalty, but also, I don't want to say good because it sounds malicious, a good roughing the passer when he drove Derek Carr into the ground after sacking him. When that happened, also, Derek Carr got hurt and had to leave the game. So then Jameis Winston came in. And Jameis Winston is the only quarterback in NFL history to throw for 30 touchdowns in a season while also throwing for 30 interceptions in the same season. So, you don't know what you're going to get with him. So when he comes in, I got even more worried because I'm all right, this guy could throw for 400 yards right now. He could also throw the ball directly to every single defensive back over and over and over. But thankfully for most Lions fans, they pulled it out, got the win, and got to get out of New Orleans. But yeah, it's one bright spot for me in that game. I said it earlier in the year, and I'm going to stick by it. Sam Laporta, right now, in his rookie season has just under half as many touchdowns as TJ Hawkinson had in his entire Lions career. Right now. He has more yards than Hawkinson ever had with the Lions already, right now. And I think he has the record for receiving yards for a tight end for the Lions. He's coming close. I saw a graphic and I made my eyes pop so wide that I kind of might have read it wrong. But like he's I saw a few tweets on Twitter where they're like, yeah, 7-year veteran, 4 or 5-year Pro Bowler, 1-2 year All Pro Sam Laporte. Like that sounds about right. Like he's trending upwards. Like he's being less TJ Hawkinson and more George Kittle, who's a tight end for the 49ers who also went to Iowa. I guess they produce tight ends at Iowa as well as middle linebackers. But the team's playing well. The running game is doing its best to make sure Jared Goff does not lose games. Jared Goff is doing his best to try to not do it to the past 2 weeks. And the Packers are kind of pushing behind them kind of strong. They don't have any more games against winning teams. But the Lions should be able to take care of this and win the NFC North for the first time ever, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it would be huge. I believe it's the Bears that we have next, if I'm looking at the schedule right. Dan Campbell is really known as this guy who pushes to go for it on fourth down. And it seems like he's doing it more than other teams, but other teams are picking it up too. Are we kind of seeing a fundamental shift with what we're doing with fourth downs going forward?
No. He's still going to be him, and he's still going to push the envelope sometimes. There will be times where it's maybe they won't do it with a fake punt because like early on they did it a few times and they caught teams off guard because like a fake punt is really what you do when you think you're going to lose, in my opinion. It's one of those trick plays you do where it's like, we don't really have a snowball's chance in hell, so let's just go out there and do something crazy and see if it works. And then it works, and you're like, we got a chance. So when teams pick up that you will do that just because, they'll put someone there to make sure. So maybe they'll probably go for it more on fourth down as like an actual play versus like a fake punt. But we have seen him the last few weeks definitely line up on fourth down for like 4th and 4, try to draw the other team offside and use the fact that they actually line up on fourth down more often than not to try to get someone to jump. And it hasn't worked because teams pick up on that. But yeah, I think there's still going to be the same old lines when it comes to like Dan Campbell's play calling. Like I don't see that changing because he doesn't strike me as someone who changes because people adapt to him, which is good, but also can be very bad.
The Bears, are you too worried? I'm not.
No, because it's an outdoor game at Soldier Field, and like the weather is not going to be the worst, but it's going to be not great. And while Justin Fields is definitely a talent, that team is not good. And honestly, I don't really know what to do for him. He's a mobile quarterback. He's going to give the Lions defense trouble, especially if their pass rush cannot get to him. He's going to give them trouble. But I don't think it's going to go like the last game where the Lions had to come back. I think the Lions are going to take control early. They understand that they cannot lose another division game. They cannot lose a division game to the Bears for pride's sake and for standing's sake. I think they'll take care of business. I'm going to say something like 28-12.
Real quick, because honestly, I don't think there's much to talk about with that game. That Iowa game was just, I mean, Iowa, you're speaking about Laporta and some others. Like, Iowa is, I think, the best mid-range team in America. like they find some success and they do put out good players, but it's like they never really put all the pieces together, and they put no pieces together against Michigan. I don't think there's much to talk about it, but I think we should mention it really quick and then also look ahead to Alabama.
I mean, that's what I said in the episode before, where they're like, what do you think? I'm like, they're probably one of the worst ranked teams in the country, and that's nothing against them. They were ranked in the top 25. They were number 20. Like, that's an achievement. They also have one of the worst offenses in the entire NCAA, and like it showed. Their best player for them is a kick returner / defender, Cooper DeJean, and he didn't play because he's been hurt. So like without him, like they didn't have a chance before. They definitely didn't have one during the game. There was a bar in Iowa that was offering free beer until Iowa scored.
Oh no.
Like you finish your beverage, you bring it back up, they'll give you. So like I'm sure they took a huge loss. But that's a thing when like you have local bars in your own town, like we're going to host a thing until we score. They know full well like, oh, we suck. And we'll never see Iowa in a Big Ten championship game again, because with the new teams coming in next season in the Big Ten, there's going to be no more divisions, straight up just conferences. So it's the best two teams. So, and to put it in perspective, when they switched to having a Big Ten East and Big Ten West, do you know how many times the Big Ten West won the Big Ten title?
I actually do not.
0. Every winner has been the Big Ten East. Whether it's been Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, it's not been anyone in the Big Ten West. So like, it's the biggest participation trophy you can get, where it's like, congrats, you're here. Not gonna get mud stomped. You could have made better games with 2 Big Ten East opponents. Honestly, I would have rather seen, and I know this is I would have rather seen Michigan State play Iowa, and that would have been a much closer game than Michigan. Because like once they got down, you saw the entire defensive heads like, we're not going to score a point. If we can't score a point defensively, we're not going to score. Switching to that thought process, on all the Michigan people were super hyped, and then I saw the video of Michigan's football team finding out they're going to play against Alabama, and the audible gasp actually surprised me, because I know some people are like, we can take Alabama. It's like, you got Alabama. They're like, we do.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do an in-depth episode on this because I think there's a lot more to unpack, and it's a little bit of a while away out there, but you pull an SEC team and you're going to have a challenge. And I don't care which Big Ten team you are. I firmly believe there is a definite 2-tier structure between the two, and Michigan has its work cut out for it.
Even when Ohio State competed against SEC teams and played well, I didn't think they would do it, because the track record is you Big Ten against SEC in football doesn't end well. And you got Nick Saban with his team getting prepared, coming off of a very huge historic victory over Georgia. You better hope Connor Stallions is still around, because you might actually need those signs after all. Like, I don't know what to tell you right now, man. I will, like you said, we'll do another in-depth thing, but that team was scary. That team was very scary in the SEC final, and the style of play Michigan wants to play might not work against them.
I don't think Michigan has no chance. Like, I'm not saying that that's the case. I'm just saying this is going to be the toughest challenge for this team all year.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying they don't have a chance either. It's just, I know they were hoping for Florida State, who I think really should have got in as well, but it's a different story.
Yeah, they got the short end of the stick. I feel real bad for Seminoles fans.
They were hoping to get Florida State, who is missing their starting quarterback with a broken leg, and they have a receiver in Keon Coleman, who used to play for Michigan State, so you have some familiarity there. You know how to cover those people. Versus a team that the last few times you've played has literally kicked your teeth in. So yeah, you kind of hope for a different team. But I'm not saying they don't have a chance at all. It's the playoffs. You're top 4 teams in the country. You're ranked number 1.
But there's going to have to be something special pulled out of the hat.
Yeah, no mistakes can be made. So
let's move on. The Detroit Pistons, not a great story, but unfortunately notorious for the wrong reasons. As we're recording this, 17 losses in a row. Will they hit the record of 26, Fletcher Sharp? I have very little faith in this team right now. I am very disappointed.
Yeah, they have the Grizzlies coming up, who... that'd be a good game to win. If they're going to win a game, would be the Grizzlies, because the Grizzlies are also struggling without Ja Morant, who's been suspended because he was way too keen on showing off his firearms last year. But if they don't win against the Grizzlies, they have the Magic, who are playing great, the Pacers, who have one of the best players in the league, 76ers twice with Joel Embiid, who's going to flop the entire game, Milwaukee Bucks, with Giannis. They have the Hawks, who still have Trae Young. The 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. They get to the Jazz, which is another winnable game. That would be 25 straight losses at that point. Then if they don't win that, they have the Nets back-to-back, 23rd and the 26th of December. So can you imagine how awful it would be to break that record the day after Christmas? Talk about a heartbreaker. At home after Christmas, losing a record. No, like they I don't want to say that they can do it, but like it looks bad. And I'll admit they're fighting harder the last few games, but the biggest thing I noted, and I mentioned to you before, is they're the only team in NBA history to lose more than 15 games and have all those losses come while scoring 100 points.
If this doesn't start to turn around in some way by the end of the season, I think there's going to have to be some changes over at the Pistons Performance Center.
Yeah, I mean, like, Monty's not going. They don't.
No, I don't think it's him.
As
I
much
think
money as Tom Gores has, he can't fiscally afford to get rid of Monty after a year.
Yeah, but you can't give Mario Andretti a gremlin.
No.
That's what's happening, right? Like Mario Andretti's a legendary race car driver. You put him in a gremlin against whatever F1 cars, he's gonna lose.
The thing that's concerning the most to me, I guess, with the Pistons, I know Jaden Ivey is supposed to be this guy, and he's been coming off the bench, and he has no problem with it. My biggest issue with that is I trust Monty, even though I know his track record has been kind of spotty to start before it got really good. He didn't even consult their number 1 draft pick from the year before to be like, hey, we're putting you on the bench. He just put him on the bench. No conversation, just you're not starting anymore. Boom. That's it. And that to me, that's, I don't know if he's trying to play like a mind game to make him hungry, but like that's wild in today's NBA. You gotta talk to players, man. You can't just do, and it's happened before. When they were in Phoenix, he had Jay Crowder, who's an NBA champion, and he just put Jay Crowder on the bench. And Jay Crowder, after realizing what's happening, demanded a trade, got out of Phoenix. And like these young players they have, the bedrock of players they have, all really talented players, all have their own deficiencies. Cade Cunningham, turnovers. Asar Thompson can't shoot. Jaden Ivey's working on shooting. Killian can't really score by himself. Jalen Duren, free throws. But like they all have super talent that just needs to work together and mesh. And again, like we've been saying, we didn't think they'd come out here. Like I thought at best maybe a dark horse wildcard team. At worst, like not very good. But I didn't think historically bad. Like, do you know how crazy it is for you to score 100 points and still lose by 25? To the Raptors, giving up 142 points in 2 games, giving up 136, then 126 and 133. Dude, that's like, I'm not gonna ever call someone's effort out ever as a professional athlete. I'm gonna try not to, but like, bro, what are you doing? Like, some of these teams, like, sure, they have some firepower. Like the Pacers have Halliburton, I understand that, but the rest of these teams don't. They don't. So how are you doing this? And the part that's the most scary for me, and then we can definitely move on from this because I want to will this positive things. The part that's really scary for me is it's not like they're tanking like the 76ers when they started TJ McConnell for like most of the season. And like they started players who they had no intention of keeping because they just wanted to get bad and get a bunch of number 1 overall picks. And it's like, oh, our number 1 pick's bad. All right, put the scrubs back in. The Pistons have their core. They have the players that they actually want to have. It's not like they have Jaden Ivey and they have Jalen Duren and it's like, okay, next year they're going to be gone. They're only starting for this year. You have players you want to keep, and you have all of them, and you're losing this badly. Like it'd be one thing if you had like, I don't want to say scab players, but you get my point. Players you have no future for. They're literally here just to be fodder, and then they're gone. You have the key players you want, and you're just getting drubbed, and I that's got to set off some alarm bells at the GM's place.
100%. Look, if this continues, I don't think these should be the core players. It's just that simple. Let's move on because this topic hurts my heart. To something I'm actually excited to talk about. This is actually somebody I'd love at some point to get on the podcast and get some stories from, because to me, Jim Leyland is among the last of the old school baseball managers, both extremely gruff and also extremely funny. There are stories all over the league about this guy. Some of my favorite Tigers baseball memories are under Leyland's stewardship for the Tigers, and I just absolutely love like his biggest quote, which I've seen online, which is, "You don't lead by lip service, you lead by example." And I think Jim Leyland going to the Hall of Fame, well deserved. I love to see it. And, in case people don't know, he's still involved with the Tigers organization. He's the kind of guy you want on your team. He's the kind of guy you want leading your team. And I'm glad to see this.
Yeah, I can't name the manager for the Tigers before Jim Leyland. Like, I can't. Jim Leyland was the guy who got me actually to pay attention to the Tigers. Like, I knew players before. I knew other things. But, like, I didn't really appreciate the Tigers until I started paying attention to Jim Lee. I called him Cigarette Jim because, like, I was like, look, I know they outlawed smoking in dugouts, but like they didn't. If they were like a gray area, Jim would be smoking in dugouts today.
I mean, he snuck cigarettes all the time, man. Like, that's part of the legend of him.
Like, I think honestly, if they let him on the field, he would go in the dugout and smoke. And that's just Jim. And I appreciate that. I appreciate his commitment to like playing small ball at times where it's like, why? He's like, because runs.
Yep.
And it's like, you know what? Okay. Like, do I want to see you hit 4 slap singles? No. But did it also score 1 run or 2 runs? Okay. I'm going to shut up.
He knew what he had on the field at all times.
Exactly. And like, that's the awareness. And just also, like you said, the gruffness, the mustache coming out when you could just tell it's like, he's normally looks unpleasant. He just looks like he's having like a weird day. But let a pitcher give up 2 home runs and you'll see that he actually has other emotions, and most of them are just more versions of him being more and more upset. But like I appreciate just how genuine he seemed. Like, he didn't seem like someone putting on a show to then, he just seemed like him. And like, one of my biggest regrets is when I got to go into the dugout, and because I was covering a game, a player for the Royals. I got to talk to Tigers players and I didn't get a chance to talk to him. Like, I really would have loved to do that, but also I probably would have let out one weird eep, and then he would have been like, "Get out of my office," and I would have been like, for sure, and cried on the way out.
I would love to have Jim Leyland just talk baseball stories in the studio someday.
Well, I mean, his funny is also still gruff. Like, it's not like he's on there like John Mulaney. Like, no, he's still very much like the grandpa who is like, why are your feet on the couch? But then he sneaks you a little, candy, like, here you go. But also like, don't do that again. And you're like, all right, yes, sir. Like, no matter, like, he's someone who, like, no matter, we could work together in the same whatever for 20 years. I'm still calling him sir because he still scares me. Like, it's a scare of like respect, but also a scare of like, I know for a fact that you're old, but if we went in a fight, you would beat me up.
Oh, 100%. That guy's got to have old man strength.
Like, you might weigh like maybe 120 pounds soaking wet and just smell like a marble that's just been dipped in like the finest. But like, I know for a fact you might break me in half if we fought.
I want to see Leyland by Dior or something like that. That would be hilarious.
It's just going to be cigarette ashes.
I'd get it because it's the guy, right? It's the guy. I'm so happy for him. I'm happy for the Tigers organization. I'm glad that he got, I really wish he had gotten a World Series with us. I really do. But glad that he got one, even in another city. And I'm glad that he's with the organization, and people with him, like him being with the organization, give me hope. I want to have hope for this Tiger season. I'm probably setting myself up for pain. But between all these baseball guys, I'm like, you know what? I want to believe. I just want to believe this year.
I mean, for sure. Because, I mean, kind of like the Pistons, but hopefully not the same. The Tigers have their players that they're looking at that they want to keep and try to build around. One being Torkelson for sure. Like, they want to do something. Like, they don't expect necessarily to make noise and be disruptive. But again, their division is really weak, so they could just go out there and play the game they normally play and still find their way into the playoffs. So like, they just want to go and compete. And honestly, as long as people see these teams competing and trying super hard, even with all the young guys, most of them will be forgiving. That's what's one thing I'll say, just not to throw back to the Pistons, that's still been really surprising, is like, they've been getting drilled, but like the attendance is still around like 90%. Like, that's, if you give people a reason to show up, they will show up. So like, I'm sure the Tigers will probably do the same. They want to just keep people showing up. They might not win every single game. They probably won't. I think it's statistically impossible to do that. But like, they're going to go out there and try. And as you have people like Jim Leyland, who's in your organization, like, I'm sure you can't go out there and not try, because he'll find his way to your locker room and make sure you know to try next time.
It's the Christmas season, so it's kind of like the Morleys and Ebenezer Scrooge, and this is the ghost of baseball past, and shows up with like some chains or something and be like, you need to work on batting practice on the off season. Look, Detroit is one of the best sports towns in America, if not the best, and it is the best because of the fans, right? Like, that is what's so special about it. And one of the reasons why we talk sports every Monday with Fletcher Sharp at St. FDW on all the things. Fletcher, so good to talk to you.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me again.
All right, with that, thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Make sure to leave 5 stars, not 1, 2, 3, or 4, but 5 on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. I am Chair Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.